Hi, good evening, and welcome to my daily live session on various topics for execution excellence, basically on various tools and methods from my toolkit, which I have acquired and learned over so many years, decades of working experience and consulting and coaching experience too. My name is Dinakar. I'm the founder of Samuthana and the inventor of Duha, a methodology for changing mindset and culture through contextual discussions and debates. So, with that very brief introduction, let me invite you to the Duha web workshop on 14th of March. I do that every 2 weeks to really get people to experience Duha workshop. It's no, there's no uh, liability or obligation from your side. If you want, you can participate. To do that, please visit my website dinakarmurthy.com and then register by clicking on the link to this particular web workshop. So maybe we can again see each other on 14th of March, Sunday at 11 o'clock Indian Standard Time. So thanks a lot. With that very brief introduction, let me directly jump into what I've been speaking about all these while, and very quick recap of what I spoke yesterday, which was about brainstorming. I think some of you posted the comments, but I'm very sorry. I don't know. There's some technical glitch here. I couldn't see the comments live. Uh, and therefore there was some problem there. I'm really sorry for that. But let's see that today it may have got okay, or I'm not sure what the reason is. Maybe I need to investigate and find out what the problem is. But that apart, thanks a lot for your comments, which I saw later in the evening. And brainstorming is something which is very, very simple tool for answering any question, which definitely is complex to answer, complex problem, complex challenge, complex question, wherein one would possibly need perspectives from different people, so that different perspectives would then give you a more reliable and a robust answer to that question or to the challenge or to the problem. And therefore, brainstorming is something which can be used everywhere. So I said, when you're brainstorming, the most important thing is to have the right set of participants, and then to make sure that you have the right facilitator, because otherwise he'll make some of the participants sleep, and that won't really be good in brainstorming. Everybody should be equally participating, actively participating. Otherwise, somebody there in the brainstorming will totally derail by going on his agenda, which is quite common in companies. There are a lot of teams and dynamics, so be careful of that. But other than that, brainstorming is a very, very easy tool. Key factors would be right participants and a very, very good competent moderator or a facilitator. And other than that, I also mentioned that it's important that you really look back on facts. It's the brainstorming is something which basically comes from the gut, and always from the gut is not going to be good. So you need to have some amount of facts and data. Therefore, it's important to also look back and try to include some facts and information, data into your brainstorming activity. So with that brief recap of what we did yesterday. Happy brainstorming, and maybe when you do the next time, select the participants correctly, those who really know the subject. It's not just about getting any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Of course, you can have one or two people who can be what you call as the fresh eyes, who really don't know anything. But then still, they should be able to understand. You can't really get somebody who's all the while worked in, let us say, manufacturing to do brainstorming on how are you going to be manufacturing a particular molecule in pharma industry. He may not really be able to, or she may not really be able to contribute much at all. So at least some kind of a related experience, related background must be there. So that's something which I spoke. With that very quick recap, let me directly jump on to today's topic. Today's topic, which I am talking about, is what is it? It's about the healthy buffer. Buffer is something which I'm not sure whether you have heard of having any buffer. See, in my experience, there is nothing in this world you can do without a buffer. Buffer is something which is mandatory. Why is buffer mandatory? Because you always have Dr. Murphy acting in all whatever that we do. So if you don't have a buffer, then you are really going to hit the wall dead on. So head on. So it's generally not going to work out. So buffer is mandatory. Whatever be the activity, whatever planning we do, whatever kind of an activity we do, buffer is mandatory. Without buffer, we should never work. That is the first introduction. And then we talk about what is the project buffer. See, in any project, there are multiple tasks, multiple activities involved in completing a project. And these tasks could be done by multiple people. And generally, in a project, there is one thread or one flow which is going to be the critical, which can be called the critical path, which basically is having consecutive tasks without any gap between the tasks. And that is the one which is deciding the project lead time. and that is called as a critical path in the conventional CPM methodology, critical path method, and whereas in the critical chain project management, the only difference is when you are having such tasks which are parallel in nature, critical path method doesn't consider resource to be a constraint. Therefore, even if the multiple tasks are being performed by the same resource, critical path method conceptually would consider those as parallel tasks, because the task could be performed by anybody. Whereas critical chain project management is more commonsensical in nature. It can't be done by anybody. Only that person has to do. Therefore, whenever there are parallel tasks to be which needs to be done by the same resource, then they are put in sequence. They don't become parallel tasks. Therefore, you have the chain. That's the critical chain. So the lead time increases, because obviously you can't get the same chap to do three tasks in parallel. Therefore, it has to be in sequence. Therefore, the number of the total lead time of the task will increase. That is the fundamental difference between CPM and critical chain project management. And once you have understood the difference, which is either you allocate parallel resources or additional resources for parallel tasks needing similar resources, or you go the commonsensical way saying that he's the only or she is the only resource available for that, who's competent to do that particular task. Therefore, you plan in the project plan itself, when you're doing the project planning, that these will not be parallel tasks but will be sequential tasks. That is the fundamental difference between CPM and CCPM. After that, now I come to the project buffer. See, another thing with CCPM is, in any project management, generally every task has a buffer. I told you buffer is very much necessary, right? Absolutely, it is necessary. You can't really get away with buffer. What happens is, in project management, since the organizations have got KPIs and each one have got their own targets and their own performance metrics and all this, quite complex. It is not easy at all. And to really put in the right performance metric is really a challenge. It's not easy at all. So for that, you need wisdom. I can keep telling you whatever I want, but unless I see the situation, I won't be able to tell you whether the metric that you have chosen is right or not. Many a times, the metrics that we choose to drive the performance in an organization is totally wrong, with which instead of improving performance, we stagnate the performance. That's something which is very critical, and one needs to really be aware of that. And to be able to understand what metric needs to be changed, you need to have a good amount of exposure to understand the entire situation holistically. Only then it can be done. It's like painting. All of us are painters, right? And not many are Leonardo da Vinci's or Pablo Picasso's, because it's an art. The art of defining what KPI it is, what metric to be chosen, is not easy at all. So anyway, so that's that apart. Now, in terms of the KPI, let us assume that the company has got KPIs which are not conflicting, which are not really contradicting to the performance enhancement. And in such a situation, every task owner would really plan a buffer always, because I want to be safe. When I give a commitment, I want to meet that commitment. Therefore, a buffer is planned. Now, in the case of a operational environment, which is mainly doing repetitive tasks, such a buffer, in my opinion, is quite acceptable. It is logical, because each task is definitely linking to the other task, and if that task is not performed correctly, then the next task would get delayed. Therefore, any delay there would mean that the entire operations will collapse. Therefore, it is important that each task owner delivers the respective task and outcome on a particular date and time mentioned. That's what is called as on time in full. Now, the difference in project management is, since any project is called as project, because the project is something which is very unique. You're doing it for the first time. Therefore, the accuracy in estimating how much time you would need is very difficult. And also the assumption as to what kind of a buffer do I need is also like shooting in the dark. It's really not possible at all. And so that's something which is very important, to understand that you can't really be shooting in the dark to define the buffer or to define the lead time. Both will be very difficult to estimate. Of course, with some amount of experience, you can say that it will be so much or so less, but then you have not done the task at all. You're doing it for the first time. Whereas in the operations environment, the same task has been done earlier. Same task has been done multiple times earlier. So you know the amount of duration it will take. You also know the amount of buffer that you need because of the surprises that may come up, because both are known. Therefore, putting a buffer in each individual task makes sense. In the project management environment, that is absolute foolishness to do that. And still people do that. That's the unfortunate thing. It's like telling that, look, there are people who have been talking about something for such a long time. Goldratt has been speaking about CCPM for such a long time, but not everybody in the world have embraced it. It's absolute basic common sense. And in the industry, common sense is gone. It's forgotten because it doesn't complicate anything. It's absolute common sense. That's the way we work. And there, what is it that is necessary is to say that we are going to put all the buffer at the end. That means take out the buffer from each of the tasks. Whatever they say is the task touch time, only that amount of time is planned for the task, and put the entire buffer, which is the accumulated buffers from each of the individual tasks in the critical chain at the end of the project. That means you have a particular project which will have possibly so much amount of activity time, and then you would possibly have so much amount of buffer. I'm okay with that. You can have possibly 40% when you start the project. You may be having the total task lead time, whatever you calculated as 40% of the project lead time, and the buffer is 60% of the project lead time. My dear ladies and gentlemen, very good, absolutely fine. Go ahead, because project is with surprises. So there is no kind of a, what should I say, pinning against a wall and making that guy accountable. If there is a delay is bound to happen. So let us all be clear, the delays are bound to happen. Therefore, in project, you put the project buffer at the end of the project, and that project buffer is what you see here on the graph, which is a green color. Now, what happens in the project buffer? Again, the next thing, which is again important, this is again communication. Next thing which is important is on a daily basis, every project task manager who's having an active task, not the ones who are not doing an active task, the one who has already started his task has to mandatorily define what is the expected due date, expected delivery date, expected due date. And if this expected due date changes in the critical chain, then automatically you eat away from the project buffer. You got it? That is what you see here. The planned due date was at this point. Where do I go there? Yeah, planned due date was here, and then the expected due date is something which is earlier than the planned due date. This is a fantastic situation to be. That means you started to plan a particular buffer. As you move along in the project, a particular task got completed earlier. Therefore, your project buffer is much more than what you had planned initially. And now you can relax a bit, but then the same thing could get reversed much later in the project. Therefore, the concept is expected due date has to be updated on a daily basis, and by those task owners who are already on the task. And based on that, you calculate what would be the expected due date of the project. And if the expected due date of the project is within the project buffer, it eats away the buffer. If it is earlier, then you have an advance. In this case, the buffer would increase. When the buffer increases, what you could do is slow down, reduce the resources, save the cost, go slow a little, and then so that you don't have any urgency in doing it, because project management is done that way. There's a different way of managing projects, which is called a ZCPM. Of course, you're most welcome to write to me if you want to. I can always tell you whatever I know of. I can always share my wisdom with you. Of course, if it is a question of defining KPIs and all, like I said, it's not just that easy. I need time and I need some amount of investment in that. So that we will definitely look at. You can write to me. Dinakar@samutana.com is my email, and I'll definitely be more than happy to explain that to you. This concept of project buffer is extremely important, and that's something which I wanted to talk to you about today. So please believe that Dr. Murphy is in our lives, always is there in our lives. So we have to mandatorily plan with buffers. And in the case of project, put the project buffer at the end, not for every individual task. That won't really make any sense. Thanks a lot for watching. And for those of you in India, have a nice evening. For those of you outside India, have a great day ahead. And before I leave, as usual, I'll give you a quick preview of what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. It's about training. Training is another tool. And I'll not talk about training is something known to everybody. So I'll talk about what, in my opinion, are the key success factors for ensuring that the training is effective. Thanks a lot for watching, and goodbye. See you tomorrow, more or less the same time. So now I need to really search out a little. It's a little difficult to get my mouse back here. Okay, so thanks a lot, and goodbye.